In this part, Naruto fights someone who knows Sarah, his old master who taught him how to use the sword, and we get a bit of Naruto and Minato interaction, trying to bond with each other again, um, and Haku ex Sasuke a bit. Hope you all enjoy. Roll the intro.
And today thinking myself
It had been a week since Naruto's speech, and at the moment, bridge production was on hold for a day. Tazuna saw fit to give his men a day off because they were so far ahead of schedule, due in no small part to Naruto. Naruto, Sasuke, Yakumo, and Haku were sitting in the living room of Tazuna's house hanging out. Over the past week, Haku had proven to be not only trustworthy, but easy to talk to as well. Team 11 and Haku now got along as if they were never enemies, instead childhood friends. The team had learned that she was the holder of the Hyoton bloodline, which Naruto and Yakuma thought was cool. Let me know if I pronounced that right. After finding out about Haku's bloodline, Naruto thought it would be fun to mess with Sasuke by turning to him and asking, "Why hasn't your bloodline activated?" Which resulted in Sasuke sulking in a corner and growing even more insecure about his lack of Sharingan. Despite this, Sasuke and Haku actually got along really well. Since Naruto and Yakumo usually stuck together, Sasuke was left with Haku, and the two had gotten to know each other really well. The two considered each other good friends already. Haku loved hearing stories about Konoha and Sasuke's family. Their friendship got to a point that Sasuke eventually asked Haku if she wanted to stay at the Uchiha compound when they returned to Konoha, until she could find her own place, to which Haku accepted. Throughout the entire conversation, both Sasuke and Haku were blushing like crazy. Everything was relaxed until, while in the middle of Yakuma's explanation of a new genjutsu idea, Naruto stood up with a serious look. Looking at his team and Haku, he said, "Trouble on the bridge," before rushing out the front door. Yakuma quickly followed while Sasuke turned to Haku, knowing who it was on the bridge. "Haku, gather the town. It ends today," he said, gaining a nod from Haku before quickly following his teammates. Naruto, Yakumo, and Sasuke quickly made it to the bridge to find a short man in a suit and sunglasses, a tall man with long white hair tied into a ponytail and holding a katana at his side, and a mob of at least 200 thugs lined up behind the two. The group focused on the short man as he stepped forward to speak. "So, you're the ones who have kept that idiot builder alive. I must say that you've been a very big inconvenience for me, but if you throw enough money at a problem, it tends to go away," he said with an evil smirk. After Gato was finished, the man with the katana stepped forward, flaring his chakra. As he unsheathed his sword, Naruto started walking towards with a smile. "You two take care of those thugs. Leave this guy to me," Naruto said confidently. Yakumo looked ready to protest, but Sasuke put his hand on her shoulder and shook his head. "He'll be fine. For now, we have to protect the bridge." Getting a nod from Yakumo, and with that, the battle for the bridge had begun. Naruto looked across the bridge at his opponents with a smile. "Why don't we take this somewhere else?" suggested Naruto, to which the white-haired man simply nodded too. Making their way away from everyone else, the two entered a clearing in a nearby forest. Upon arriving, the two faced each other, Naruto summoning his sword and his opponent unsheathing his katana. "I sure hope that you know how to use that thing. I haven't had a challenge in forever," Naruto said with a grin. The white-haired man chuckled at Naruto's statement, causing the genin to frown. He then spoke to the boy facing him. "Yes, not many can compare to the grace and power in which Sarah wielded her blade," he said, visibly shocking Naruto. "She certainly was one of our strongest members, so I'm excited to see how her apprentice measures up," he said, with a grin before flaring his chakra. The genin started shaking and asked, "How do you know that?" Before getting his nerve back, the man smirked. "Well, any self-respecting swordsman would be able to detect the power coming from that blade. As a matter of fact, your sword is even stronger than Sarah's, and her sword was the strongest I had ever come across. As far as I know her, as far as why I know her, that's a secret. Let's get this over with, he said, causing Naruto to fall into his battle stance. Both swordmen ran at each other, with each strike between swords causing sparks to fly. Naruto was swinging his sword trying to find an opening, but his opponent's form was perfect. Naruto, having enough of close combat, jumped backwards and swung his sword, releasing a chakra wave that flew towards the unnamed katana wielder, who just smirked. When the wave arrived, he simply rose his katana and held his ground against all of the strikes compounded in the wave. Look, kid, I've actually got an appointment to keep, so what do you say we just end it right now? One last strike, he asked, angering Naruto, who felt underestimated. The boy just nodded and held onto his sword tighter while making a final dash towards his unknown opponent. While he did the same, the two ended up 10 feet away from each other, backs to one another. Naruto smiled before feeling a sharp pain and dropping his sword, which vanished before it hit the ground. Looking down, he saw a large gash across his chest. Falling to his knees, he had one thought: I lost. His opponent stood up and walked over to stand in front of Naruto. Well, I must say, you're more than what I expected. You even managed to nick my shoulder, but all for not right, he said before shoving his katana into Naruto an inch above his heart and out his back, causing Naruto's eyes to widen and yell out in pain. Just as quickly as the man had stabbed Naruto, he removed his sword and sheathed? I don't know. It's sheath your sword. So it's resheathed. I don't know. It before turning away and leaving, only to stop after walking a couple feet away. By the way, kid, the name's Aileal, he said before vanishing, leaving Naruto on the ground, holding his hand over his recent wound. I swear Aileal's a girl name. I think I've heard that. I don't know. Naruto was holding the area where he had been stabbed, trying to ignore the gash in his chest when he heard the sounds of battle. He needed to help his team, so with great effort the genin rose and went as fast as he could in his injured state to the bridge. Sasuke and Yakuma. Yakuma and Sasuke had started out strong, but 200 grown men, some of which were using weapons such as clubs, knives, and daggers, were starting to wear on the two genin. So far, Yakuma had killed 15 thugs, as she had started with making distractions in the beginnings, but had knocked out around 30 men. Sasuke had killed 40 people and knocked out 30 as well. Yakuma had started running low on chakra after using 3 powerful genjutsu, and was now exclusively using taijutsu. Yakuma was adept in taijutsu, but when she was surrounded by a crowd, despite moving as quickly as possible, she was unable to avoid the constant amount of blows, but continued to fight on until a member of the crowd hit her in the back of the head with a club, knocking her out. The man around her would have killed her if not for Sasuke making his appearance, using Great Fireball Jutsu to incinerate 10 of the men around Yakuma without harming her in the process. Before Sasuke could refocus on his group, he was hit in the back and forced to his knees. When he looked up, he was met with the disgusting face of just another thug, except this one was holding a sword to Sasuke's throat. I gotta say, kid, you gave us a good fight, but your time's up, the man said, raising his arm to dissipate Sasuke. The genin closed his eyes and waited for the strike, but it never came. Opening his eyes, he was met with the sight of a wall that seemed to be made of ice blocking the man's blade. The man looked at the wall in confusion when a fist came. Opening his eyes, he was met with when a fist came from the corner of his vision and punched him backwards quicker than he could defend himself. As he landed on the ground, he found 3 senbons stuck in his arm. The other man, shaken from their slight shock at such a quick turn of events, were able to locate the attacker, who looked to be just a girl in a kimono. Before anyone could do anything, a layer of mist started to cover the bridge. When the thugs started trying to regroup, body after body began to fall to the ground, each with a senbon in their neck. Sasuke wondered what was going on since he couldn't see from the mist, and behind the ice wall was protecting him when a familiar face emerged from the mist. "Haku," said Sasuke, with a slight smile, gaining one in return from the girl who approached the genin, kneeling down to meet his eyes. "Sasuke, I'm glad I wasn't too late," she said with a slight blush. "No, I think Yakumo over there is gonna need some help soon, but I think the two of us should be able to take on the rest of these guys," he said, gaining a nod from Haku. Sasuke stood up with a little assistance from Haku. When the two were standing, Sasuke faced Haku and looked at her one more time. A girl who had started out as his enemy was not someone he trusted on the same level as his teammates. Someone he was about to free a country with. He saw determination in her eyes and lost focus for a moment looking into her eyes. It was in this moment that both ninja failed to feel a new presence enter the area. When Sasuke finally felt the presence, it was too late. The thug that Haku had saved him from, shielding him from his sword with an ice wall, now had the same sword pushed right through Haku's back and out her stomach. As soon as the thug released the sword from his grip, he received the kunai right through his eyes and into his brain, as Haku fell with a look of shock on her face. Sasuke fell with her. Immediately, tears had started to fall from Sasuke's eyes, and were also building in Haku's. Sasuke looked at her wound frantically, trying to think of a way out of this. When Haku saw this, she smiled and placed her hand on Sasuke's, gaining his attention immediately. "Haku, just hold on. I'll get us out of this. Just let me think. Sasuke was stopped from saying anything else by Haku, who gently put her finger on his lips, silencing him. "Thank you, Sasuke. Thank you for making me feel wanted. Thank you for making me feel important," she said, before weakly bringing his face down so that their lips met. Sasuke was surprised at the action, but fell into it. He was reminded of the situation when Haku's body suddenly went limp in his arms. "Haku! Haku! Come on, Haku, please don't leave! Wake up! Wake up!" he screamed before yelling out at the sky. He felt a burning sensation in his eyes, but he disregarded it as he laid Haku's body gently onto the ground and rose up. Turning to the remaining men, he clenched his fist and released all the killer intent he could. The group of thugs shivered when they looked into the boy's eyes, which were now red with 2 tomo in each eye. Sasuke took out his last kunai and made a decision. These men would die by his hand, even he had to go down with them. That was their punishment for taking someone who was precious to him away. Sasuke ran at the crowd with a battle cry ready for blood. Naruto finally made it to the bridge and was met with a sight of nearly 100 dead men. Looking quickly for his team, he found Yakumo, who had a small pool of blood coming from what looked like to be a head injury and covered in various other cuts and bruises but still breathing. His eyes then landed on Haku, who had a chest wound and was not breathing, which hurt Naruto's heart immensely. After limping further along the bridge, he found an unconscious Sasuke laying next to Gato, who had a kunai driven into his chest. As he made his way to Yakumo, he noticed movement from the far end of the bridge. Sasuke, Yakumo, and Haku had taken out 100 of the thugs, and after seeing the viciousness of Sasuke, had fled. But upon realizing that the boy that had horrified the group was out of commission, the remaining 100 regrouped and returned to the bridge. The genin was tired despite how quickly his battle with Ailil was. The man had known where to strike, so Naruto was in an immense amount of pain every time he moved one for some reason. Naruto could feel his chakra burning. He was so low on chakra that his vision was becoming blurry, and he had found it hard to stand. Knowing that this might be the end for him, he decided that it would not be the end for his team, even if it killed him. So with a new source of strength and determination, he rose his arm and summoned his sword, raising it to the sky. The swordsman shouted, "Death Splicer," and swung his blade down, sending his chakra forward in a visible wave that went speeding towards the crowd before falling to the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. The men stared, feeling good about themselves, although the front line of men's bodies erupted with blood from hundreds of slashes. The same thing happened for the second line, third line, and so on. A few of the men tried to run, but it was useless. The wave of sword slashes found them. In one attack, 100 men were dead, the bodies shredded beyond recognition. Naruto watched the effects of his attack from his position on the ground. When it was over, he looked over at the one most precious to him, Yakumo. With all of his remaining strength in his arms, the boy pulled himself closer to Yakumo, before rolling onto his back. Luckily, Yakumo was only unconscious and the bleeding had stopped. Her breathing was fine, which was something Naruto was eternally grateful for. Taking her hand and looking at her beautiful face, he moved his head to look at the sky. With his most precious person hand in his, he smiled, accepting his fate. As he faded, the last thing he saw was a flock of crows flying in the sky. Naruto awoke, panting. Looking around, he recognized that it was in a Konoha hospital room. As he continued to savor his surroundings, the door to his room opened. "Oh good, you're awake," said a woman with short black hair. "You gave us quite a scare," she said with a smile. Naruto narrowed his eyes in confusion. Who are you exactly?" he asked, which gained a frown from the woman. "It's me, Shizune. Come on, I've been by your house plenty of times. You know, Aunt Shizune," she said with a smile, hoping Naruto remembered her. Naruto nodded his head in recognition. "Yes, you were the one who always stuck with Tsunade. I believe that this is the first time that we have ever met. Everyone always had a tendency to fawn over Menma and Narumi while completely ignoring me," he said with a hint of bitterness, causing Shizune to gain a look of sadness on her face. Truthfully, Shizune had realized that she was wrong to ignore the boy, and had been kicking herself ever since she heard about him becoming a genin. It actually spread pretty quickly throughout the village, but the strength of Naruto causing many people to try and get on his good side. Shizune really wanted to have a good relationship with him, but knew it would be a tough road ahead. Without a word, Shizune checked over Naruto's chart and nodded. "Just buzz me if you need anything, okay Naruto?" she said, getting only a quick nod in return. Shizune sighed and left the room. A tough road indeed. Naruto looked out the window at the village. "How'd I get back to Konoha?" was the question in his mind before seeing his chart on the bedside table. Reaching out and grabbing it despite being in incredible pain and being really sore, he scanned over his injuries. Besides his sword wounds, the only real injury he had was extreme chakra depletion to the point that he almost died. Pathetic. I got in one small fight and end up in the hospital because of 2 sword strikes and too much chakra? Pathetic, he thought before looking at his hands and noticed that they were covered in blood. He tried wiping the blood off in the blanket, but it wouldn't come off. Slightly annoyed, he buzzed Shizune to come to his room. Not even 20 seconds after buzzing, Shizune entered the room with a smile. "Is there something wrong, Naruto?" she asked, and Naruto showed her his palms and gaining a confused look from Shizune. "Can I get a wet towel to wipe the blood off my hands, please?" he asked, causing Shizune to frown and gain a concerned look on her face. "Naruto, there isn't any blood on your hands," she said. "Oh, yeah, there is. See? It's all over my palms and arms," and then he stopped before his eyes widened. "Kai!" he shouted, trying to get out of his genjutsu. When it didn't work, he began to hyperventilate. Visions of the bloody, unrecognizable bodies flashed through his eyes. He only found mercy from the vision when Shizune injected him with a heavy sedative. Ordering a separate nurse to stay and watch Naruto, she left for the Hokage's office. Itachi was standing in front of the Hokage and Jiraiya, giving his report of what he had seen involving Team 11's mission. He had already given the report of his own personal report and was now telling the story of Wave. "I had finished my mission early and decided to check on my team's progress by heading to Wave. When I arrived, the entire village was on edge and practically hiding. I asked around about my team and eventually an old man was able to give me information on their location, the bridge. So I headed there, and upon arriving, I noticed Sasuke, Naruto, and Yakumo were each unconscious. I created shadow clones to carry my team to the village for some help, while I looked for clues on what happened," he said before pausing, getting a curious look from Minato and Jiraiya. "What did you see, Itachi?" asked Minato. Itachi shook his head. "I apologize, Lord Hokage. I saw well over 100 bodies littering the bridge. Upon examination with assistance of my Sharingan, cause of death was half by kunai, half was by sword. When I returned to the village, I learned from one of my shadow clones that my team was settled in the home of an old man who gave me their location. I found my team and healed their immediate wounds as best as I could. After 2 days, Sasuke and Yakumo woke up. Naruto did not wake up. I carried him on the third day along with shadow clones carrying Sasuke and Yakumo, who still needed recovery but in a real hospital. I also became aware on the way here that Sasuke has awakened his Sharingan with 2 tomo in each eye. Itachi finished. Minato could feel a migraine coming. Were the people there that were dead ninja? Minato asked. Itachi simply shook his head. Jiraiya snorted. Your team, who you say are gonna be better than the Sannin, barely took out a couple of thugs who don't even use chakra, the Toad Sage mocked, causing Itachi to tighten his fist and unconsciously activate his Sharingan. I stand but what I say. My team will be better than the Sannin. Better ninja and better people. They won't become a lunatic who enjoys experimenting on people, a drunk who doesn't care about her family's legacy, or a pathetic old man who can only spend his days peeping on women because he's useless for anything other than writing his poorly written books. I warn you, Jiraiya, don't ever insult my team in my presence, or I'll let you feel the true wrath of the Sharingan, he said with an angry look in his eyes. Enough, Minato shouted, trying to stop this before anything physical could occur. Jiraiya, please leave. I still need to finish up with Itachi. Jiraiya left through the window, but not before leaving a fierce glare at Itachi. Minato sighed, rubbing his head and looked up when his office door opened and Shizune entered. Before he could say anything, Shizune spoke. Lord Hokage, Naruto's woken up but just had a panic attack, she said quickly. Minato's eyes widened upon hearing the condition of his firstborn and quickly rose from his desk and shunched to the hospital. Naruto's hospital room. It took 3 hours for Naruto to wake up from his sedatives, induced nap, and was immediately met with the sight of his Hokage. Minato, realizing that his son was awake, met his eyes. When I returned to Konoha after killing 1,000 Iwa shinobi, I was treated as a hero. I was given the moniker of the Yellow Flash of Konoha. I was treated with respect, but I never felt like one. True, I did my duty to my village, but not a day goes by that I don't think about the day that I ended the lives of those men and women. After making my way through all of the villagers and fellow ninja that wanted to buy me a drink, I made it to my apartment and saw blood on my hands. No matter how much I washed, the blood wouldn't come off. If your mother had not been there for me, I had no doubt that I would have killed myself. I just want you to know that you're not alone, and if you ever need someone to talk to about this, I'm here. I may have been a horrible father, so bad that you may not see me as anything more than your Hokage, but I'm sorry for everything. You will always be my son to me, and I will always love you, Naruto, he said with a tear falling from his eyes. As Minato began to stand up to leave, he was stopped by Naruto, who grabbed him in a hug and started sobbing. Minato's eyes widened before hugging back, and between the sobs, Naruto spoke. It hurts so bad. The loneliness, always being ignored. I only wanted to make you proud, he said, letting the tears fall. Minato tightened his throat. I know, son, and I'm sorry that I didn't realize it until now. I'm so sorry, he responded. After a couple of minutes, the two released from their hug and wiped their tears. Naruto looked in his father's eyes, looking for any sign of deception before speaking. I forgive you, Dad, he said, causing new tears to come from the two. And that's where I'm gonna end it, guys. I hope you've all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next part. Roll the outro.
Wanted a bitch who was on the move, but you want a goddamn late. Got that one in my bed and she just wanna sleep. Fucking up all of the sheets. She only wake up to eat. Do this shit every week. Like why you do that? Crying you wanna be great, but sleeping until the next day. Why you do that? Got that much in the bank. We go out, she order the steak. Why you do that? Can't explain.